The massive ship called Eternal Harmony floated in the darkness of space, like a small moon made of metal and crystal. Inside its biggest room, hundreds of alien beings sat in rows that went up and up toward the ceiling. The air buzzed with strange sounds as different species talked in their own languages. Some looked like giant lizards with scales that changed color when they moved. Others were made of living crystal that sparkled with inner light. A few floated in tanks of thick gas, their tentacles waving slowly back and forth. At the front of the room, a tall figure stood behind a curved desk that glowed with soft blue light. Ambassador Kilnara belonged to the Vorthak Empire, and her reptilian face showed no emotion as she looked down at the small group of humans sitting far below. Her yellow eyes were cold and hard, like pieces of ancient amber. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the room without any need for speakers or machines. "The Galactic Council has called this meeting to address a serious problem," Kilnara said. Her words were translated instantly into hundreds of languages by machines built into every seat. "The species known as humans has been expanding into space systems that do not belong to them. This expansion threatens the peace that we have kept for thousands of years." Hyun-Woo Park sat very still in his chair at the human table. He wore a simple black suit that looked plain compared to the fancy robes and armor worn by other delegates. His face showed no worry or fear, even though he knew that every alien in the room saw humans as nothing more than children who had just learned to walk among the stars. Next to him sat Yunbi Kim, a woman with sharp eyes who kept looking at a small device hidden in her hand. On his other side, Tae-Ho Lee typed quietly on a tablet, recording everything that happened. The holographic display above the room suddenly came to life, showing a perfect image of Earth floating in space. The blue and green planet looked small and fragile compared to the massive ships and space stations that surrounded it in the image. Red lines appeared on the display, marking the 3-star systems that had caused all this trouble. "These systems," Kilnara continued, pointing at the red marks with one clawed finger, "have been claimed by the humans without permission from the Council. They have built colonies, mining stations, and military bases in areas that were supposed to remain neutral. This cannot be allowed to continue." Murmurs filled the room as different species discussed what they were hearing. Most of the sounds were not friendly. The Nexari delegates, beings made of living crystal, flashed with angry red light. The Molthara floated higher in their gas tanks, which meant they were upset. Only the humans remained quiet and calm. Kilnara raised her hand, and the room became silent again. "The Council has decided to give humanity one final chance to avoid serious consequences. You have 72 hours to remove all human presence from these 3 systems. All colonies must be evacuated. All military forces must withdraw. All mining operations must stop. If humans do not obey this order, the Council will use its enforcement fleet to remove you by force." The threat hung in the air like a thick cloud. Every alien in the room knew what the enforcement fleet could do. It had destroyed entire civilizations that refused to follow Council orders. Planets had been turned to glass. Whole species had been wiped out of existence. The fleet was the ultimate weapon of the Galactic Council, and it had never failed to complete its mission. Hyun-Woo stood up slowly. His movement was so calm and controlled that it made some of the aliens lean forward to watch him more closely. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Ambassador Kilnara, the human delegation requests the standard 72-hour deliberation period that is granted to all Council members when facing major decisions. We need time to discuss this matter with our government on Earth." Kilnara's eyes narrowed slightly. She had expected the humans to beg for mercy or to argue about the fairness of the Council's demands. Instead, this small man was following proper diplomatic rules, as if nothing unusual was happening. It was almost insulting. "Very well," she said after a long pause. "You have 72 hours, but understand this clearly. There will be no extensions, no negotiations, and no second chances. Comply with our demands or face the consequences." The session ended with a loud sound, like a giant bell ringing. Aliens began filing out of the room in groups, their voices growing louder as they discussed what had just happened. Most seemed pleased that the upstart humans were finally going to be put in their place. A few expressed surprise that humanity had been given any warning at all. Hyunwoo gathered his papers while Yunbi and Tai-ho packed their equipment. They moved without hurry, as if they had all the time in the world. Other delegates watched them with curious eyes, wondering how these humans could be so calm when facing total destruction. As they walked toward the exit, Yunbi leaned close to Hyunwoo and whispered very quietly, "The readings from our stealth probes are very interesting. Their fleet positions don't match what our intelligence reports said they should be. Something is not right about their military setup." Hyunwoo nodded slightly but said nothing. They continued walking until they reached the transport bay where their ship waited. The vessel looked small and simple compared to the massive alien ships around it, but Hyunwoo knew that appearances could be very deceiving. Once they were safely aboard their ship and heading back toward Earth, Hyunwoo activated the secure communication system. The message he sent was short and used code words that would mean nothing to anyone who might be listening. "Earth Command, this is Diplomatic Mission 7. Meeting concluded as expected. Aliens have issued standard ultimatum with 72-hour deadline. Recommend immediate activation of Protocol 7. Important note. They have no idea what they are dealing with. Repeat. They have no idea what they are dealing with." Taeho looked up from his tablet where he had been reviewing recordings of the meeting. "Do you really think they're that unprepared for what we can do?" Yunbi checked her readings one more time before answering. "Their intelligence about our capabilities is at least 20 years out of date. Maybe more. They're still thinking about the humans they met when we first made contact. They don't know about any of the advances we've made since then." Hyunwoo stared out at the stars passing by as their ship moved through space. Each point of light represented a sun with planets around it, and many of those planets were home to species that belonged to the Galactic Council. For thousands of years, these aliens had ruled the galaxy without any real challenges to their power. They had grown comfortable and confident in their strength. "They think they're dealing with primitive newcomers who barely understand space travel," Hyunwoo said quietly. "They have no idea that humanity has been learning from every piece of technology we've encountered. They don't know that we've improved on everything they've shown us. Most importantly, they don't understand how quickly humans can adapt and change." The ship continued its journey toward Earth, carrying its passengers and a message that would change everything. Behind them, the Galactic Council prepared for what they thought would be an easy victory against a weak opponent. They had no way of knowing that they were about to make the biggest mistake in the history of their civilization. In 72 hours, the galaxy would learn what happened when you threatened humanity without understanding what humanity had become. Deep beneath the busy streets of Seoul, South Korea, an elevator dropped down through layers of rock and metal for what seemed like forever. The underground military complex called Dragon's Den had been built in secret over many years, hidden from satellites and spy networks that might try to discover its location. When the elevator finally stopped, its doors opened to reveal hallways lined with screens showing star maps and ship movements from across the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Jin Soo Choi walked quickly through these hallways, his uniform crisp and clean despite the early morning hour. Officers and technicians stepped aside as he passed, giving respectful nods to the man who commanded humanity's entire space fleet. His destination was the main command center, a huge room filled with holographic displays that showed the position of every human ship in known space. Subin Han was already waiting when Jin Soo arrived. The tactical coordinator stood in front of a massive screen that displayed numbers and charts in glowing blue text. Her fingers moved quickly across a control panel as she updated fleet positions and weapon status reports. When she saw Jin Soo, she turned and gave him a quick bow. "Admiral, we received the diplomatic team's message 30 minutes ago," Subin said. "Protocol 7 has been activated across all fleet commands. Every ship captain has been notified and is awaiting further orders." Jin Soo nodded and walked closer to the main display. The screen showed a three-dimensional map of the galaxy with tiny dots representing human ships spread across hundreds of star systems. Most alien species would have been amazed to see how far humanity had spread in just 50 years, but Jin Soo was more interested in the red dots that marked Galactic Council fleet movements. "What do our intelligence reports tell us about their current strength?" Jin Soo asked. Before Subin could answer, another person entered the command center. Dongmin Kong moved like a shadow despite his large size, a skill that served him well as head of human intelligence operations. He carried a thick folder filled with documents and photographs that showed alien ships and weapons in detail. "Admiral, the situation is better than we could have hoped," Dongmin said as he opened his folder. "The Council's intelligence about our capabilities is incredibly old. They're still using reports from our first contact missions 50 years ago. As far as they know, human ships are slow, lightly armed, and use primitive navigation systems." Subin brought up a new display that showed the specifications of current human warships. The numbers were impressive even to people who worked with them every day. "Our latest ships can move faster than anything the Council has ever built. Our weapons can punch through their strongest shields like they were made of paper. Most importantly, our new AI targeting systems can track and hit multiple targets simultaneously while our ships are moving at full speed." Jinsu studied the information carefully. Humanity's rapid advancement had surprised even their own military leaders. What started as reverse engineering captured alien technology had become something much more powerful. Human scientists and engineers had taken alien concepts and improved them beyond what their original creators thought possible. "How many ships do we have ready for immediate deployment?" Jinsu asked. 847 combat vessels are currently operational," Subin replied. "That includes everything from fast attack ships to heavy cruisers. All of them have been upgraded with our latest technology within the last 6 months." The doors to the command center opened again, and Min-Ji-Oh entered the room. As head of the Xenological Studies Division, she spent her time learning about alien psychology and behavior patterns. Her job was to predict how different species would react in various situations, and right now, her predictions were very important. "Admiral, I've been analyzing Council communication intercepts for the past week," Minji said as she joined the group around the main display. "Their confidence level is extremely high. They're not just certain they can defeat us, they think it will be easy. Most Council species achieved space travel through gradual development over thousands of years. They cannot understand how quickly humans can learn and adapt." Jinsu listened to all of this information while planning his next moves. The Council had made a serious mistake by threatening humanity without understanding what they were dealing with. But Jinsu also knew that this situation could be very dangerous if not handled correctly. "What about their enforcement fleet?" he asked. "How many ships are they likely to send against us?" Dongmin flipped through several pages in his folder before finding the right information. "Intelligence estimates suggest they'll deploy between 200 and 400 ships for this operation. They consider it a police action rather than a real war, so they won't commit their entire fleet. The problem is that even their police actions are usually enough to destroy entire civilizations." Subin highlighted several areas on the star map where Council ships had been gathering. "They're positioning their forces at the edge of the disputed systems. Standard Council tactics suggest they'll make a show of force first, demanding immediate surrender before attacking. They like to give their enemies one last chance to submit without fighting." Minji nodded in agreement. Council psychology supports this assessment. They prefer to win through intimidation rather than actual combat when possible. Fighting is expensive and wasteful in their opinion. They would rather have us surrender and become a client species than waste resources destroying us completely. Jinsu walked around the command center looking at different displays and thinking about his options. Every screen showed some aspect of humanity's military strength: ship positions, weapon capabilities, supply lines, and communication networks. 50 years ago, none of this had existed. Humans had been limited to their own solar system, using chemical rockets to move between planets. Now they commanded a fleet that could challenge the most powerful force in the galaxy. "I want our ships moved into position around all 3 disputed systems," Jinsu decided. "But keep them hidden using our stealth technology. The Council should see only what we want them to see. Let them think they're facing a small, desperate force that's trying to protect a few isolated colonies." Subin began entering commands into her control panel. "How many ships should we reveal to their sensors?" "1," Jinsu said with a slight smile. "Let them see exactly 1 human warship in each system. Make it look like we're trying to make a brave last stand with whatever forces we have available." Dongmin understood the strategy immediately. "You want them to think we're either incredibly brave or completely stupid. Either way, they'll be confident that their superior numbers guarantee an easy victory." "Exactly," Jinsu confirmed. The Council has ruled the galaxy for so long that they've forgotten what it's like to face a real challenge. They expect every species to follow the same slow, predictable patterns of development that they did. They can't imagine that humans might have found faster ways to advance. Minji brought up psychological profiles of key council leaders on one of the smaller screens. Their military commanders are experienced but rigid in their thinking. They follow standard battle plans that have worked for centuries. They won't be prepared for tactics they've never encountered before. Jin-Su studied the alien faces on the screen. These beings had conquered countless worlds and destroyed numerous civilizations. They were not evil exactly, but they were absolutely certain of their own superiority. That certainty would become their weakness. What about civilian casualties? Subin asked. If fighting breaks out, there are human colonies in all three systems. Evacuation plans are already in motion, Dongmin reported. Essential personnel only will remain on each colony. Everyone else is being moved to secure locations. The Council doesn't know about our rapid evacuation capabilities, so they'll assume the colonies are still fully populated. Jin-Su nodded, approvingly. Protecting human lives was always the top priority, even when planning military operations. The colonies could be rebuilt if necessary, but the people could not be replaced. Admiral, there's one more thing you should know, Minji said quietly. Our psychological analysis suggests that the Council genuinely believes they're doing the right thing. They see themselves as maintaining galactic peace and order. From their perspective, humans are dangerous newcomers who need to be controlled before they can disrupt the stability that has existed for thousands of years. That almost makes it worse, Jin-Su replied. An enemy who thinks they're evil can sometimes be reasoned with. An enemy who thinks they're righteous will fight to the end. The command center fell silent for a moment as everyone considered the implications of what was about to happen. In less than 72 hours, the careful balance of power in the galaxy might change forever. Humanity was about to announce its arrival as a major force in galactic affairs, and the announcement would be written in fire and metal across the void of space. Send a message to all fleet commanders, Jin-Su finally ordered. Tell them to prepare for immediate action, but to wait for my signal. When the Council makes their move, we'll be ready to show them exactly what humanity has become. The space around Kepler 442 had never seen so many warships gathered in one place. 300 massive vessels hung in the darkness like artificial stars, their hulls gleaming with metal and crystal that caught the light from the distant sun. Each ship was larger than most human cities, carrying weapons that could turn planets into dust and shields that could stop the energy of entire star systems. Fleet Commander Zethmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the final ships take their positions in the attack formation. His reptilian features showed satisfaction as he observed the overwhelming display of force. The Vorthak Empire provided the largest number of ships, but vessels from 11 other Council species had joined the operation. Crystalline Nexari cruisers sparkled with internal energy, while Molthara gas ships drifted like living clouds between the more solid vessels. Commander, all ships report ready for combat operations, announced Veltara from her position at the tactical station. The young Vorthak officer had served under Zethmore for many years, and she shared his confidence in the superiority of Council military power. Long-range sensors detect minimal human presence in the target system. Zethmore moved closer to the main display screen that showed detailed scans of the Kepler 442 system. 3 small human colonies appeared as tiny dots of light around different planets, while mining stations worked slowly to extract resources from asteroid fields. Most importantly, only one human warship was visible anywhere in the system. One ship, Zethmore said with something that might have been amusement in his voice. They send one ship to face our entire fleet. Either these humans are incredibly brave, or they have no understanding of military reality. The human vessel appeared on the screen as a small object that looked almost primitive compared to the massive Council warships surrounding it. Intelligence. Reports identified it as the Indomitable Spirit, a ship that belonged to the class humans called heavy cruisers. By Council standards, it was barely large enough to qualify as a patrol vessel. Should we demand their immediate surrender? Veltara asked. Standard procedure calls for one final warning before beginning combat operations. Zethmore considered this suggestion while studying the tactical display. 300 ships against one seemed like such an unfair fight that it was almost embarrassing. But Council regulations were clear about following proper procedures, even when dealing with obviously hopeless situations. Open communication channels to all human vessels and colonies in the system, Zethmore ordered. Let them hear what they're facing. The communication system activated with a soft chime, and Zethmore's voice was broadcast across multiple frequencies to ensure that every human receiver would pick up his message. When he spoke, his words carried the authority of someone who had commanded fleets for longer than most humans had been alive. This is Fleet Commander Zethmore of the Galactic Council. Enforcement Fleet. All human ships and installations in this system are in violation of Council territorial laws. You have 1 standard hour to evacuate all personnel and abandon your illegal claims to this space. Any human presence remaining after that time will be removed by force. The response came much faster than expected. The single human ship broadcast, back on the same frequency, and the voice that answered was calm and steady, showing no sign of fear or panic. Fleet Commander Zethmore, this is Captain Wu Jin Nam of the human vessel Indomitable Spirit. The colonies and mining operations in this system are legally established under treaties signed 50 years ago. We reject your demands and will defend our legitimate territorial claims. Silence filled the bridge of the Eternal Dominion as Zethmore and his officers tried to process what they had just heard. A single ship was actually planning to fight against 300 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. It was so unrealistic that some of the younger officers wondered if they had misunderstood the humans' words. Commander, their ship is moving into a defensive position between our fleet and their colonies, Veltara reported. They appear to be serious about offering resistance. Zethmore watched the tactical display as the human ship changed course and speed. The Indomitable Spirit was positioning itself to protect the civilian installations behind it, a gesture that was both admirable and completely pointless. One ship could not possibly shield 3 entire colonies from the firepower of an entire fleet. Very well, Zethmore said after a long pause. If they insist on learning about Council power the hard way, we will provide that education. Select 10 ships from different species and have them target the human vessel. Use enough firepower to disable their ship, but not enough to vaporize it completely. I want their crew to survive long enough to witness what happens to their colonies. Veltara began selecting targets and coordinating with the other ships in the fleet. 10 massive warships moved forward from the main formation, their weapon systems charging with energy that made space itself seem to glow. Vorthak plasma cannons, Nexari crystal beams, and Molthara disruptor fields, all focused on the single human ship that dared to challenge them. On the bridge of the Indomitable Spirit, Captain Wu Jin Nam watched the approaching enemy ships with steady eyes. His crew worked quietly at their stations, making final preparations for what everyone knew would be a completely one-sided battle. Weapons Officer Ha Yun-ju checked her targeting systems one last time, while Chief Engineer Yonho Kwok monitored the ship's power distribution. Captain, they're charging weapons, Ha-Yun reported. Energy signatures suggest they're planning to disable us rather than destroy us outright. They want us alive to watch them destroy the colonies, Wu Jin said quietly. How very typical of Council psychology. They always want their victims to understand exactly how powerless they are. Yonho looked up from his engineering console with a slight smile. Captain, all systems are ready. The new deflector matrix is fully charged and standing by for activation. Wu Jin nodded and opened a communication channel to Earth Command. His message was brief and used codes that would mean nothing to anyone intercepting the transmission. Earth Command, this is Indomitable Spirit. Package delivery is about to begin. Recommend all units prepare for immediate deployment. The Council ships completed their targeting solutions and fired simultaneously. 10 beams of devastating energy lanced across space toward the lone human vessel, carrying enough destructive force to crack the surface of a moon. The combined firepower would have been sufficient to destroy most space stations or reduce a small city to radioactive ash. Ha-Yun watched her instruments as the enemy weapons approached their ship. At exactly the right moment, she activated the deflector matrix that human engineers had spent years developing in secret. The technology was based on principles that Council scientists had discovered centuries ago but never fully explored because they seemed too energy-intensive to be practical. The alien weapons struck the human ship and simply vanished. For a moment, it looked like the indomitable spirit had been completely destroyed by the overwhelming attack. But then the ship reappeared exactly where it had been, completely undamaged and apparently unaffected by weapons that should have reduced it to scattered atoms. What happened? Veltara asked in confusion as she stared at her tactical displays. Our weapons hit their target directly. The ship should have been disabled at minimum. Before Zethmore could answer, space around 3 of the Council ships suddenly exploded with brilliant light. The redirected energy from their own weapons struck them with terrible force, overloading their shields and tearing massive holes in their hulls. 2 ships lost power completely and began drifting helplessly, while the third split apart in a shower of metal and crystal. Impossible, Zethmore whispered as he watched his own weapons destroy his own ships. No species has that kind of defensive technology. Hayun opened a communication channel from the indomitable spirit to the entire Council fleet. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly to every ship in the enemy formation. Fleet Commander Zethmore, you have just witnessed a demonstration of current human defensive capabilities. Your weapons cannot harm us, but they can certainly harm you. This is your final warning. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences of continued aggression. The Council fleet responded exactly as human psychologists had predicted they would. Faced with something they could not understand or explain, they became angry rather than cautious. Zethmore's voice roared across the communication channels as he ordered his entire fleet to open fire on the single human ship that had somehow humiliated his forces. All ships, maximum firepower. Destroy that vessel and everything else human in this system. 300 warships opened fire simultaneously, filling space with enough energy to sterilize entire solar systems. The light from their combined weapons was visible from planets many light-years away as the most powerful military force in the galaxy focused all of its fury on one small human ship. That was the moment when Yan Ho activated his long-range communication system and sent a single coded signal into apparently empty space around the system. The message was simple. All units, execute deployment pattern Alpha. Repeat, execute deployment pattern Alpha. The battle clock on the bridge of the human command ship Sunrise began counting at exactly 14:32:15 Galactic Standard Time. Subin Han stood at the tactical coordination station, her fingers moving across holographic controls that connected her to every human ship in the system. The quantum communication network allowed her to coordinate hundreds of vessels as if they were extensions of her own mind. Around the Kepler 442 system, 300 Council ships suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they had not expected to exist. Human vessels appeared from empty space where advanced stealth technology had hidden them perfectly. The alien ships had been so focused on the single human cruiser that they had not detected the massive fleet surrounding them. All ships, this is Tactical Command, Subin broadcast on secure channels. Execute combat pattern Delta 7. Remember, we want to disable and capture when possible, but protect yourselves first. These aliens chose this fight, not us. The Council fleet reacted with the speed and coordination that came from centuries of military experience. Zethmore's voice could be heard on their communication channels as he tried to reorganize his forces to meet this unexpected threat. But Council ships were designed for traditional space warfare, where fleets faced each other across thousands of kilometers and fired massive weapons until one side was destroyed. Human ships had been designed for something completely different. Captain Seo Jin Park commanded the destroyer Taekwondo, one of the fastest ships in the human fleet. Her vessel was smaller than most Council cruisers, but it moved through space like a dancer while the alien ships lumber forward like giants. When the battle began, she demonstrated the new combat doctrine that human strategists had developed over years of studying alien weaknesses. Hayun, target the Vorthak heavy cruiser at coordinates 47 Mark 8, Seo Jin ordered. Yan Ho, prepare for micro-jump on my command. The micro-jump technology was something that Council scientists had never even imagined. Instead of the massive energy requirements needed for long-distance space travel, human engineers had found ways to make tiny jumps across short distances. A ship could disappear from one location and reappear somewhere else in the same battle area, making it almost impossible to track or target. Micro-jump in 3, 2, 1, execute. The Taekwondo vanished from its position 3,000 kilometers. away from the Council ship and reappeared directly beside the massive alien vessel. At point-blank range, Ha-Yun fired the ship's plasma lance weapons into the enemy's hull before the alien crew could even realize what was happening. The Council ship's shields were designed to stop weapons fired from long distances, not attacks that came from a few meters away. The human weapons punched through the alien defenses like they were made of paper, sending explosions through the interior of the ship. Before the enemy could return fire, the Taekwondo disappeared again and reappeared somewhere else entirely. "Target disabled," Ha-Un reported with satisfaction. Moving to next target. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out as human ships used their superior speed and maneuverability to destroy enemies that could not fight back effectively. The Council fleet's powerful weapons were designed to hit targets that moved in predictable patterns, but human ships seemed to appear and disappear at random. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Veltara watched her tactical displays with growing horror as ship after ship in her fleet was disabled or destroyed. The humans were not fighting like any enemy the Council had ever faced before. Their ships moved like ghosts, striking without warning and vanishing before return fire could be aimed. "Commander, we're losing ships faster than we can count them," she reported to Zethmore. "Their weapons are cutting through our shields like they don't exist. How is this possible?" Zethmore stared at the battle display with the expression of someone whose entire understanding of reality was being destroyed. For his entire military career, space battles had followed certain rules. Ships faced each other in formation and exchanged fire until the weaker side was defeated. But these humans were ignoring every rule of warfare that had existed for thousands of years. "All ships, concentrate fire on their command vessel," Zethmore ordered desperately. "If we can destroy their leadership, maybe we can break their coordination." But the human command ship Sunrise was not where Council sensors said it should be. Subin Han had moved her vessel using the same micro-jump technology that all human ships possessed, making it impossible for the aliens to target her. From her new position, she continued to coordinate the battle with perfect precision. "Yonho, how are our power levels holding up?" she asked her chief engineer. "All systems running at optimal efficiency," Yonho replied. "The aliens keep trying to jam our communications, but our quantum networks are operating on principles they don't understand. They might as well try to stop gravity with their bare hands." Subin nodded and turned her attention back to the tactical display. The battle was proceeding exactly as human strategists had predicted. Council ships were powerful but slow, while human vessels were smaller but incredibly fast and agile. More importantly, human weapons had been specifically designed to penetrate the types of shields and armor that Council ships used. "All ships, Phase 2 of the attack pattern," Subin announced. "Begin targeting their weapon systems specifically. We want them alive if possible, but helpless to continue fighting." The second phase of the human attack was even more devastating than the first. Instead of trying to destroy Council ships completely, human vessels began surgically removing their ability to fight. Plasma lances cut through weapon turrets, while ion beams disabled shield generators. Within minutes, dozens of massive alien warships had been reduced to floating scrap metal. Captain Wujin Nam on the Indomitable Spirit watched the battle unfold around him with quiet satisfaction. His ship had served as bait to draw the Council fleet into attacking, and the plan had worked perfectly. Now he could see enemy ships being disabled one by one as human tactics proved superior to alien tradition. "Ha-Un, how many Council ships are still combat capable?" he asked. "Less than 50% and falling rapidly," she answered while monitoring the battle through her targeting systems. "Most of their remaining ships are trying to retreat, but our fast attack squadrons are intercepting them before they can escape." Yonho looked up from his engineering station with a concerned expression. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildups from several Council ships. I think they're preparing to self-destruct rather than surrender." This was something that human strategists had considered possible. Some alien species would rather die than admit defeat, especially when facing enemies they considered inferior. But Subin Han had prepared for this possibility as well. "All ships with tractor beam capability. Priority targeting on vessels showing self-destruct signatures," she broadcast immediately. "Disable their power systems before they can complete the sequence." Human ships equipped with tractor beam technology began focusing their efforts on the Council vessels that were preparing to destroy themselves. The beams locked onto enemy ships and drained their power cores, making self-destruction impossible. It was a mercy that the aliens had not shown to other species they had conquered over the centuries. Zethmore watched helplessly as his flagships' power systems were systematically disabled by invisible human weapons. The lights on his bridge dimmed as emergency power kicked in, and his tactical displays showed only static where clear battle information had been moments before. "Commander, all our ships have been disabled or destroyed," Veltara reported quietly. "The humans have achieved complete victory." The battle clock on Subin's command station showed 14:32:52 when the last Council ship stopped firing. 37 seconds had passed since the engagement began, and the most powerful military force in the galaxy had been completely defeated without destroying a single human vessel. "All ships, cease fire," Subin ordered. "Begin rescue operations for Council survivors. Medical teams prepare to receive alien casualties." The silence that followed was broken only by the quiet sounds of human ships moving through the debris field, looking for survivors among the wreckage. In 37 seconds, humanity had announced its arrival as the dominant military power in the galaxy. But the real consequences of this battle were only beginning to spread across the stars as news of the impossible defeat reached every Council world. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so quiet. 3 days had passed since the Battle of Kepler 442, and the news had spread across every inhabited world in the galaxy. The same room where Ambassador Kilnara had delivered. Her ultimatum to humanity now felt different, as if the very air had changed. Delegates from hundreds of species sat in their assigned seats, but none of them spoke above a whisper. Hyunwoo Park walked slowly through the main entrance, followed by Yoonbi Kim and Tae-ho Lee. This time, however, their small group was not alone. Behind them came a full diplomatic escort of 12 humans, each representing different aspects of Earth's government and military. The message was clear, without anyone needing to say it out loud. Humanity was no longer sending a small delegation to ask for permission. At the front of the chamber, the holographic displays showed footage from the battle that had changed everything. The images played over and over again, showing Council ships being destroyed or disabled in seconds by weapons that should not have existed. Alien military experts had analyzed every frame of the recordings, looking for some explanation that would make sense of what they had witnessed. Ambassador Kilnara stood at her usual position behind the curved desk, but her posture was very different from 3 days ago. Her reptilian features showed none of the confidence and authority that had marked her previous speeches. When she looked down at the human delegation, her yellow eyes held something that might have been fear. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Hyunwoo Park of Earth," she announced in a voice that carried clearly through the silent chamber. Hyunwoo rose from his seat and walked to the center of the room where a speaking platform had been prepared for him. Every eye in the chamber followed his movement, but he showed no sign of being affected by the attention. When he reached the platform, he activated the holographic controls and brought up his own set of images. "Honored delegates," Hyunwoo began, his voice calm and steady. 3 days ago, the Galactic Council sent an enforcement fleet to remove human presence from 3 star systems. That fleet has been defeated, and most of its personnel have been rescued and are receiving medical treatment aboard human vessels. The holographic display showed images of human medical teams working to save alien lives. Council soldiers who had come to destroy human colonies were being treated in human hospitals, their injuries cared for by the same species they had planned to eliminate. It was a gesture of mercy that spoke louder than any weapon. "The human government does not seek war with the Galactic Council," Hyunwoo continued. "We do not wish to conquer your worlds or destroy your civilizations. But we will no longer accept being treated as inferior beings who must ask permission for our own survival." Yoonbi stood up and activated her own set of holographic controls. Technical specifications appeared in the air above the chamber, showing detailed information about human military capabilities. The numbers were devastating in their implications. Ship speeds that exceeded anything Council scientists thought possible, weapons that could penetrate shields designed to stop planet-killing asteroids, and defensive systems that could turn enemy attacks back against their own users. "These are the current specifications for standard human military vessels," Yoonbi announced. "Every number you see represents technology that has been tested and proven in combat. This information is being shared freely so that all council species understand exactly what they would face if they choose to continue hostile actions against humanity. Murmurs filled the chamber as delegates realized what they were seeing. The technical data showed that humanity had not just advanced beyond council expectations, they had advanced beyond council capabilities. Human ships were not just better than alien vessels. They were so much better that comparison seemed meaningless. Council Leader Mordain of the Nexari slowly rose from his crystalline seat. His form flickered with different colors as he struggled to process the information being presented. When he spoke, his voice carried the confusion and disbelief that every alien in the chamber was feeling. Ambassador Park. The specifications you have shown us are mathematically impossible based on known principles of physics and engineering. How long has humanity possessed this level of technology? Hyunwoo looked up at the alien leader with an expression that might have been sympathetic. The question revealed so much about how the council species thought and how they had completely misunderstood human development. Honored Mordain, we have been developing these technologies since the day we first met your people 50 years ago. Humanity learned from every interaction, analyzed every piece of technology that was shared with us, and improved upon it. What you witnessed at Kepler 442 represents 50 years of continuous human innovation, and we are just getting started. The silence that followed these words was complete and absolute. Every alien in the chamber understood the implications of what they had just heard. For 50 years, while the Council had assumed that humans were slowly learning to copy alien technology, humanity had actually been surpassing it. The species that Council leaders thought of as primitive newcomers had quietly become the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Taeho activated the final set of holographic displays, showing star maps that marked human presence across the galaxy. Red dots appeared on hundreds of star systems, representing colonies, research stations, and military bases that the Council had never detected. Humanity had been expanding across the galaxy for decades, while remaining completely invisible to alien intelligence networks. This map shows current human territorial claims, Taeho announced. We are not asking for Council permission to exist in these systems. We are informing you that we already exist there, and have for many years. Kilnara stared at the display with obvious shock. The number of human settlements was far larger than any Council intelligence estimate had suggested. Humanity had not just been hiding their military capabilities. They had been hiding their entire expansion across the galaxy. How many humans are there? She asked quietly. 47 billion people live in human settlements across 238 star systems, Hyunwoo replied. We are not the small, isolated species that first made contact with you 50 years ago. We have become something much larger and much more capable. The weight of these revelations settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Every alien present was recalculating their understanding of galactic politics and power structures. The Council had been operating under the assumption that they controlled the galaxy, but they had been sharing it with a human civilization that had grown beyond their ability to control or even detect. What do you want from us? Mordain asked, his crystalline form flickering with uncertainty. Hyunwoo walked closer to the center of the chamber so that his voice would carry clearly to every delegate. When he spoke, his words were chosen carefully to convey both strength and the possibility of peaceful cooperation. We want the same thing that every species wants, the right to exist, to grow, and to determine our own future. We do not seek to rule over other species, but we will not be ruled by them either. The galaxy is large enough for all of us to share it peacefully. Yunbi added her own statement to make the human position completely clear. Any species that treats humanity with respect will receive respect in return. Any species that chooses hostility will face the consequences of that choice. The decision belongs to each of you. The session ended without any formal votes or declarations. Such things would come later, after each species had time to discuss what they had learned with their own governments and military leaders. But everyone in the chamber understood that the galaxy had changed forever in the space of 37 seconds at Kepler 442. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Kilnara approached Hyunwoo with obvious reluctance. The proud Vorthak ambassador looked smaller than she had before, as if the revelation of human capabilities had diminished her in some fundamental way. "Ambassador Park, what happens now?" she asked. Hyunwoo considered the question carefully before answering. "Now we find out whether the Galactic Council is wise enough to adapt to new realities. Change is never easy, but it is always inevitable. The species that accept change and learn from it will prosper. Those that resist it will be left behind." 3. Months later, Dongmin Kang sat in his intelligence center deep beneath Seoul, monitoring communications from across the galaxy. The screens around him showed diplomatic messages, trade negotiations, and military repositioning as alien civilizations struggled to adapt to the new galactic order. Some species had chosen wisely. The Nexari had opened full diplomatic relations with humanity and were already benefiting from technology exchanges. The peaceful Keth Mori had requested human protection from aggressive neighbors, leading to the first formal alliance between Earth and another species. Others had chosen poorly. The Zarkanian Empire had attempted to form a coalition against humanity and had seen their entire fleet disabled in a matter of minutes when they tried to blockade human trade routes. 3 minor species had declared war on Earth only to discover that their planets were surrounded by human ships that had been invisible to their sensors. "Sir, we're receiving another batch of diplomatic requests," reported one of Dongmin's analysts.